Our first panel, which you heard they're anxious to get started, will be on post-pandemic predictions, a look into the future of New York real estate, and will be moderated by John Mechanic. I know John does not need an introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. John is chairman of Fried Frank's real estate department. John routinely counsels developers, owners, investors, REITs, and lenders in all aspects of commercial real estate transactions, including acquisitions, dispositions, development of office, retail, hotel, mixed-use properties, commercial mortgage, and mezzanine and construction financing, as well as acquisition and sale of distressed debt. John is consistently included in Commercial Observer's Power 100 list of most powerful people in New York real estate. As I said, John really doesn't need an introduction, neither does his panel, but I will now hand it over to John and let him do his thing. Thanks, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
Hi, Joanne.
How are you? Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Do we have the rest of our panelists with us? I see you.
Yes, well, glad to be here. I almost wasn't. My computer was not working, of course. So,
Well, welcome to the world of the pandemic and working remotely.
oh my goodness, we can talk about that more. I can't believe I can say I can miss my office to everyone, but I do.
By the way, I'm actually sitting, in my office.
Awesome.
This is not a virtual background. This is sitting in my office. And it's lovely to be here.
It is. So I think there's some technology, but we can start to talk a little bit about the panel and what you want to talk about today, I guess.
Okay. Well, so the panel, as they all show up, includes my friend Joanne Podell, who also needs no real introduction. She's an executive vice chair at Cushman & Wakefield, and everything retail runs through or around or near Joanne. Also, well, I see Don Peebles, the chairman and CEO of the Peebles Organization, who's now joined us.
Hey, Jonathan.
Hey, Don, nice to see you.
Good to see you.
We will have Steve Winter, who's the senior VP at Related, who we spent lots of quality time with, either on his side or the other side of almost every transaction at Hudson Yards. And then Bob Alexander, who's a chairman at brokerage at CBRE in the New York tri-state region, also affectionately known as Big Bob, who is well known to anybody who touches real estate, commercial real estate in our world in the city of New York. So I think we'll give them a minute to join us. And then we should be off to the races. Mark, do you want to check in on Bob and Steve? And maybe they may have had difficulty joining, because I know Joanne and perhaps Don and certainly I had some issues coming in.
Yeah, I will check on that.
We can get started when you're ready. Thank you.
Okay, so Joanne, why don't we start with you?
Sure.
Let's talk about retail in the age of the pandemic. Are retailers leasing any space today? And how have these negotiations changed by virtue of COVID-19 in terms of rents, concessions, termination rights, abatements, and deferrals based on pandemic type of circumstances?
Everything's new. It's starting all over again. This is the beginning of a sea change in the kinds of tenants that are out there and active, and certainly in the negotiations that the landlords and tenants are having together. So yes, there is activity.
Zoom calls with her friends. It's like more organized than this was.
Uh-oh. Well, let me talk about what's happening in retail for everybody, because there are categories that are active. You're all home, or many of you are home. And so,
by the way, the moderator, let's just be clear, is in the office, One New York Plaza, very comfortable, lots of social distancing, lots of protocols. It's all good.
And going to restaurants, I hope.
And going to
shopping in
restaurants
New
all
York.
the time,
Thank you.
right?
Okay, so some, obviously, there is a considerable amount of leasing. It certainly doesn't measure up to the years past. We'll look forward to some change, and I'll talk about that later. But home furnishings is very important today. And you see it in the number of active tenants in the market looking to open up new stores, actually coming from out of town. 2 from Italy, as a matter of fact, that I know, and I'm sure there are many others. Target taking a store in Soho, Bed Bath & Beyond extending their term on 6th Avenue, which at some point there was rumors that it was available.
But they also contracted their space, right? I mean,
Yes,
they
they did.
extended, but they contracted.
They did, and I think that's going to be something that's somewhat typical of the big box retailers. The important thing for us is they are here, they're staying, and they're growing. And so that's an important consideration. Food and beverage, you know, the QSRs, the quick service guys that we all talk about and we go to. If it's not Chipotle, it's a Starbucks, we can consider them the same. Fresh & Co. They're taking space now. So they're actively looking and taking advantage of a very soft market where the tenant can negotiate a great deal.
What about the Whole Foods and stuff like that? I would think that those
doing
folks they're doing great. I mean,
They're doing
right.
They're doing
But are
great.
they opening new stores or are they just
Yes.
doing it out of existing boxes?
No, actually, you know, all of us brokers talk to one another, and
I heard that.
It's not a rumor.
It's not a rumor. I heard that I heard you could take that to the bank.
Yeah, that's for sure. But we also share information, and
I heard that too.
And some of it's actually accurate. So that which is accurate is that there is activity amongst the Whole Foods and those types, and they're doing well anyway. Huge category and a new one for us. We talk about it as new. It's really not, and I think Steve will talk to it and to everyone else. Health and wellness. I mean, you're doing it in your buildings, and it's also on the street. It's retail. So you're looking at it and think of Peloton or a Soul Cycle. It's a huge category taking.
But those folks are
space.
selling stuff online. I mean, are they opening new retail
Yeah,
outlets?
they are. They are opening new ones because they're anticipating that this will change. You know, we all have to believe that while there's been a profound change in our world, we will again be in stores and in restaurants, and we again will shop. It'll be different. The sizes of the stores will be different. The service for the stores, the actual physical space, how people accommodate the new protocols, that's all going to happen. But retail will continue to be a viable way that people buy goods and services.
Hey, Don, pandemic or no pandemic, the real estate industry seems to have a real diversity challenge. How significant is this problem, and what can all of us involved in the industry do to try and address it?
The real estate industry has a problem. It's not just New York in terms of diversity. It's around the country. We do business in 8 different markets, and there's when it comes to women or African Americans, the ranks are very thin in the larger scale real estate development space, and that didn't happen overnight, and it won't change overnight either. Our industry needs to, especially in New York, which is the most diverse city in America. 70% of New Yorkers are of diverse backgrounds. 53% of our population are women. And so it is up to us as an industry to go out of our way and take affirmative steps to create environments of opportunities for minorities and women. Our company has made a focus of that, obviously, because I'm African American. And so we, as a company, have done over 25% of our business with minority and women-owned firms. And now we've stepped up our goal to 35% of the $4 billion of projects we have in our pipeline. It takes effort to do that. But so what we can do as an industry is we can provide jobs and look to bring in diverse candidates when we're interviewing for jobs. Partner with minority and women developers, in fact, smaller developers, to help them step up. And provided they bring value, because we're in business, and so there's got to be a transactional relationship where everyone brings value to the equation. But I think the number one challenge, and I talk about this and interact with African-American minority developers and minority real estate professionals and women around the country. And the number one challenge is access to capital. And as we know, our business is a capital intensive business, and unlike technology where you can build an app and you can fund it as you go, and you can perfect it as you go and keep going back to investors.
And then the next thing you know, it turns into Tesla.
Exactly, right. or Facebook, and in fact, you look at that and you look at our business where you could have $1 billion project or $500 million project where you've got to fully capitalize it before you start. And you have got to convince investors of that concept. So as you know, we rely as an industry heavily on private equity. And just to give you a sense of how strong private equity is, nearly $70 trillion is invested in private equity and venture capital. And out of that $70 trillion, less than 1.3% of it is invested in firms run or owned by women or people of color combined. So there's no way that no matter how well-intentioned and how engaged all of us are to bring about diversity, without having access to capital, it won't change. And the biggest single category of investor in private equity and venture capital happens to be public employee pension systems. And so there's going to be a big political push, it already is, and there'll be a greater one for the pension systems to be more thoughtful as to who they invest, who they pick as asset managers. But that's where we can change this, is by looking to make affirmative steps to bring in talented, diverse candidates. And also when we look for investment opportunities, to look at minority and women entrepreneurs. And firms like yours, I know that you all have pretty much an initiative to diversify, the associates and put them on the talented ones, put them on partner track.
Absolutely. And I'm proud to say that we have 33, I think it's close to 38% of our, at least our real estate partners, because I'm particularly focused on it, are women, and one African-American woman partner as a couple of years ago. She's awesome. So, we're doing our best, and it really takes a focus to be able to try and get people into the mainstream and do the things that we want them to do. So I agree with you.
It's a conscious effort. It's a real conscious effort. I mean, I know for me, for years, it was hard for me to find young associates that I could work with, that I could train, that were women. And it's only recently that recently, I'm in the business a long time, the last 6 or 7 years, that I've had a couple of women that I've been able to mentor and develop their skills, and they're doing have other responsibilities, right? And so
the one thing I would say, the good news is for people that have mentors like you and Don, to be able to look up to and to try and model themselves after.
Thank you.
So we have Steve Winter who's joined us. Steve.
Morning, John.
Nice to see you, sir. Hudson Yards, I understand it's a small development on the west side, isn't immune to challenges that the real estate industry as a whole is facing, as our friends at the New York Times were so gracious to point out. So how do you see the future of Hudson Yards at this point, and how does Related think about the different opportunities that may come out of the pandemic?
Sure, John. So look, we're certainly not immune, to the challenges of the pandemic. It's incredibly frustrating to see an article, like the New York Times put out over the weekend, because, we're in the middle of, a government mandated shutdown of our restaurants. So obviously foot traffic is down in our retail, but we have more foot traffic.
Restaurants are opening for indoor dining on Friday. Let's look at the good news.
There's light at the end of the tunnel.
There's light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train.
Exactly. But look, we have, more foot traffic than, others in our category. Luxury, residential sales market is, very slow. We're selling more condos than any of our competitors. And what makes me even more frustrated is kind of the office angle. I mean, we went into this pandemic 93% leased in all of our operating buildings, and those that are capitalized and under construction. So we're extremely well positioned. We have, probably the most diverse and high-powered tenant roster on the office side in the country at Hudson Yards. All of our tenants are very well heeled. They're paying rent. We think we're incredibly well positioned, to come out of the pandemic. We think there's going to be, a flight to quality. Frankly, we're excited by, the opportunity for when people, start to come back. Some of the things we've done in our building. We've been obsessed with customer service. Before the pandemic, we've been obsessed with providing our tenants with the best amenities before the pandemic. We're going to double down on that, right? We think our offering, coming out of this is going to be so desired by the leading companies in the world. We think occupiers are going to have to, create, a better experience for their employees, to bring them, back to the office. So we think there are, a lot of opportunities, coming out of the pandemic. And, frankly, we're starting to see, an uptick in activity. I mean, 2020 was slow, obviously, but, there's definitely, a strong pipeline. We see a lot of, tenants starting to get active in their process. Again, we, fortunately at Hudson Yards don't have that much space to lease right now.
I was going to say, you don't have that much to do yet. You will, but you don't have that much to do yet.
But the space that we will have coming on the market, we're definitely starting to see, folks focus, and we're excited about that.
Okay, well, so we'll come back to the pipeline issue. There's a guy you may have met before, this guy, Bob Alexander, affectionately known as Big Bob. And Bob, both CBRE as a firm and you individually have represented, related on millions of square feet of leases in Hudson Yards, seeing it really blossom into the third central business district. And I won't talk about order of priority, about which is 1, 2, and 3. Let's just say there are 3 all told. What's your view on where we are and where we're going at Hudson Yards?
Well, Hudson Yards.
By the way, I just want you to note that this is another tie and jacket guy sitting in an office.
That's the way it is since Labor Day.
Listen, let me say something. I've seen Bob come over to our office consistently since June, and every time he's got a shirt and tie on. So a lot of credit to that, Bob.
All right, we got a lot of respect for that guy.
I don't know if it's credit. It's also I got a BlackBerry and a flip phone. It just may be the way it is.
By the way, yes, it's true. And he also has a horse and buggy that takes him from 200 over to Hudson Yards.
Well, John, you bring up Hudson Yards, and look, we've had so much success there, and obviously Steve and Jeff and Big Steve have been real drivers in terms of creating the venue over there. When we look at the market now, it says every market that we've had since 2008 and 2000 that there'll be a flight to quality as the market becomes more active, right? So the new construction is going to draw a disproportionate share of the tenancies. Now, obviously, everybody's going to have a debate about pricing because that's the way it is, nature of the beast. But we believe that that's really going to draw a significant amount of activity over the course of this year and through 22. So we're really comfortable with what we've got. And the truth is that, the Hudson Yards itself, we only have 250,000 feet to offer at the top of 50 at this point. There's a couple of things going on, obviously, with a different type of product that Steve is marketing now relative to the retail, right? But it's not, it's 6+ million square feet. It's nothing. The vacancy factor is nothing. And we think that opportunity, right, to be in an exclusive building with your own lobby in a spectacular, amenity-laden location, it's going to be off the wall. We're seeing new construction draw tenants now. There's another project that we work on, sorry, Steve, which is One Vanderbilt, which is attracting a different type of tenant, a 10, 15, 20,000 foot tenant, but we think we'll be 100% leased by the end of the year. And we have done probably.
I heard that was in part because you have very effective lawyers working on the building.
you've got very effective lawyers. And by the way, you got very effective ownership. And look, I just carry the bags around at the end of the day and just try to give it and be a cheerleader for everybody. Keep them going. But this again just feeds back to the new construction scenario, right? It really will attract. And by the way, that also gets into some of the spectacular rehabs that are going to go on as well. I think they're going to be first to lease. I think what's going to happen is the buildings that don't put the capital in are going to be left behind. They're going to be last to lease, and they may turn around in 22 and figure it out. But hopefully, everybody's off to the races by mid-year this year, John.
So Bob, you deal with many large corporations on their space requirements. What are you hearing about their, reentry into their Manhattan offices? I mean, we hear a lot about, working from home. Obviously, people are dealing with that across the board. Companies are different, but when do you think this reentry occurs, and how does that reentry differ by company and by industry?
So just on the face of it, I would say the financial firms are going to be the first to come back. I think there's a combination of things going on. There's an element of workers who are like, this is good working at home because I've got it figured out now. And I really can do, in 3 or 4 hours, I can do what I have to be in the office for 8 hours plus a commute. So they're going to be resistant to coming back. I think that, senior management of these companies has to put their foot down and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you some flexibility in this remote work scenario. It's going to be 10% of the population. You get a day off a week. You can come in 4 days a week, but they have to put a plan out. And right now, and by the way, CBRE is a 100,000 person organization as well, and has the same issue. No one has put out a plan to say, besides a Jamie Dimon telling the traders they got to come back from the investment bank. Traders have been in period. Yeah, they've been in since I've been in. I've seen my friends that are traders in September, right after Labor Day, coming in. So I think you're going to have a momentum build up, but it's not something that's going to happen in the next 30 days. My guess is we start trying to put light pressure on folks to get back in by June, July, and then look to try to get to some 40 to 50% occupancy by year end. And the tech folks are the ones that are really, sort of saying, work from home, don't worry about it. Salesforce just made an announcement today or yesterday relative to its population in San Francisco. I happen to own a lot of property in Oakland, which is not good news for me, that essentially they don't have to come back to work. They're the biggest employer in San Francisco.
They have to go back. They have to come back to work forever.
That's what I didn't get into the minutia of the article, but it was basically, they occupy a whole tower.
I was going to say, are they going to turn Salesforce Tower into residential? What do you mean they're going to?
No, I think what they're looking to do, and I think we're all kind of looking into this, we've been focused on, and we've talked to, all the big tech companies that are, customers of ours throughout the country.
I heard you have Facebook as a big customer.
Facebook is a big customer, and we had an unbelievable law firm help us negotiate that with them.
We're gonna have to fund this law firm at the end of this, Steve.
But I think for Salesforce, right? I think, look, they're gonna do what I think a lot of companies are gonna do. I think who doesn't want flexibility, right? Who doesn't want to be able to, once in a while, work from home? And I think there's going to be, 5 to 10% of companies that are remote, right? There's going to be 5 to 10% of companies like Related who will be in the office every single day. We've been back 5 days.
By the way, your friends at Blackstone are also in terms of financial firms that are really
right.
back in the office. They're back in the office, other than the people that are traveling all the time. So it varies by industry, but it also varies by company.
Mm-hmm. And then I think there's everyone else, right? That's the 80% of, corporate America that's going to have some sort of flexible model. And like Salesforce, they're saying now 65% of their people will be able to, work on a flexible schedule. They'll be in the office, 3 days a week, plus or minus. And I think that's what, I think that's what a lot of, companies are going to do. We're working on a deal right now where, a company is kind of ahead of the curve. They're focused on, making a real estate decision. They're going to, increase their headcount, at Hudson Yards, we hope, if we can finish the deal, from 1,200 to 1,800. They're going to take a little bit more space, but not a significant amount of space. They're going to use, desks and head down space differently. They'll have less of it, but they're going to have more collaboration space. They're going to have more meeting space. And at the end of the day, it's not going to really move the needle that much in terms of their overall takedown. But I think more people are going to come out, with their strategy. I mean, Amazon, right? You look at Amazon, they're continuing to take down enormous amounts of space throughout the country. Google just came out and said they're going to start to reinvest and focus on, office expansion. So I think people are starting to finally make decisions, and they have to make decisions. They're going to have to start thinking about this and transact, because before we know it, people are going to be back, right? And we're going to be out of this, this twilight zone, reality that we're in right now.
You say before you know it, assuming you were a betting person, when do you think that before you know it is?
I think it's fall, right? I think a lot of the tech companies are going to draft off of what Google said, right? Google was the first to say everyone stay home, right? Google's the first to say everyone come back, and school's going to start in September, right? People are going to be able to get, kids out of the house. I think that has a lot to do with people being able to go, back to work. And I think we're going to start to see a return to what was, normal, more normal, and what we were used to pre-pandemic. And there's going to be a slow recovery period, but I think the fall, September timeframe is when we're going to really start to see people come back to the office.
Everybody's coming back after Labor Day, huh?
Right.
So Joanne.
I would agree with that. I think also one of the things that we're going to see is the productivity is not going to be as much as everyone thinks it is. I mean, some industries.
The productivity done outside the office, you mean, as opposed to in the office?
Yes. I mean, I think that people, there's an idea, there is initially, especially throughout the summer, people were looking at remote working as making them more productive. And you look at, say, someone in transactional lawyers who are document heavy, they can work from anywhere. But for the most part, we're going to see when companies begin to look back, they're going to see many sectors having a decline in productivity because of all the distractions that come with working at home and working remotely and not having immediate access to their coworkers to collaborate, to get quicker answers. And so I think we're going to see that. And I think that, these vaccines, the Biden administration is focused on deploying these vaccines. They're going to figure this out. New York is beginning to figure it out. Florida, which is where I am right now, has figured it out. So I think you'll see over the summer a continued march towards a resumption of where we were before, because we're going to get closer to herd immunity. And Steve's right. I think in the fall, people are going back to school. People will be going back to work, but it'll be different. There's all this discussion about New Yorkers coming down to South Florida. I mean, there's a lot of high net worth people buying homes and so forth down here, but there's no mass exodus of companies leaving New York coming down here. There's some small demand for office buildings. We're looking at building an office building, a relatively small one, about 300,000 square feet. But in the big picture, New York is exceptionally dynamic. Most of the industries are collaborative industries. And in our business, real estate requires collaboration, interaction with our customers, interaction with our coworkers. Developing a building requires extensive interaction. So I think we're going to see productivity increase, which will help us get back to a quicker recovery. And our real estate market in New York, residential real estate market in New York is slowed down. One, there was a bigger supply than we needed on the high end side, but the pandemic has put a pause. You're seeing it pick up now. It's going to pick up more so in the spring and summer, and then in the fall. And I think that we'll be, by the end of the year, we'll be, 80% back to where we're going to be. And it will be different, as Steve said. There will be, some combination of things. There'll be some distributed workforce, but by and large, companies are going to need their employees to get back to work and collaborate. And all these leases that are rolling and so forth, and the companies have not made decisions because of the unknown, they're going to start making decisions too. And I think we'll have a pretty robust third and fourth quarter, in terms of transactions. And then 2022 will be kind of the rebound year, in my view.
I think I would open this one question to everybody. And people who are having expiry dates that are coming up in the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, what are they doing? Are they doing short-term extensions? Are they making long-term commitments when they don't really have visibility on we all have some pretty good views about where the world's going, but obviously even as smart as the people are on this phone, we don't know exactly where it's going to go. We have a guess, but it's a guess. So if I have a lease that's coming up in 6 months or 12 months and I'm a 250,000 square foot user, what am I doing?
John, you already renewed. and that's, Joanne, you want to take that? I know Joanne's been sitting waiting patiently. Go ahead.
I'm listening to you, and of course, I'm encouraged, and I'm encouraged for all of my retailers because we need everybody back. There's a balance here that we have to find, though, because in reality, the work from home is here to stay in some way, in some format, so that we will have a change, a significant change. And from that point of view, that means there'll be less people within the offices. And so that also means that F&B and all of the rest of it are going to be affected. There'll be less sales volume, there'll be less people needed. There will be a change. Look, step back for a minute. Retail was struggling in advance of the pandemic. Right. That we need to understand that. And so this was just the final blow for so many retailers. There's going to be a very big change in the way that we view it. It'll be we're going to talk about that later, but there's this concept of the 15-minute city. I don't know if any of you guys know about it. It's fascinating. They're doing it in Paris. They're doing it in Moscow. They're doing it in different places all over the world. I think we're going to organically see that happen in New York. And what it really means is that all those goods and services that we need, whether it's ambulatory care, which is the emergency care, which is now one of the hottest retail uses, or whether it's a veterinary care. By the way, everybody buying dogs, now you need veterinary. We're going to see these small local markets, and New York City has literally tens of them. I mean, we think Upper West, Upper East, Midtown, downtown Greenwich Village, East and West. It is a huge number of markets and villages. We're going to see that you guys are going to keep your 50, 75% occupancy in these buildings. The retailers have to make decisions about their future. They can't think about it in the context of, well, you might get to 80%. They have to know whether they're assured of who their customer is. We're going to see retail shift. And the shift is going to be so interesting because it's going into those local markets. You can get the eye doctor, you can get the child care, you get your local restaurant, you get the coffee in the morning. It's going. Absolutely, we need them for the large corporations and the law firms who need to service all of us. But it'll cause the retailers to have a much more robust opportunity to grow their businesses. But for the short term, everybody's scratching their head in the retail world because they can't anticipate what their short-term volumes are going to be. So how can they buy inventory? How much inventory will they be able to have? They're already marginal in terms of their cash flow, if they're good at all. And of course, you've lost so many of them. And some of them, they would have gone anyway because they just weren't relevant anymore. But there are so many that are just on the edge, and we need to find a way for them to be able to stay in business. So what does it mean? We're going to get smaller stores in CBDs, but they're also going to go into markets and neighborhoods where we'll be able to see a very nice change. It's something that makes New York even stronger and better than it was before.
So do you think that, one, I guess the question is, do the retailers survive till people are coming back to the city? And then do they end up in much smaller spaces, and are landlords trying to keep them alive until people come back? Because it's not like there are 19 guys that are lined up to lease the retail space that somebody's going to go out of. So I would assume, and Steve, I'd be obviously interested in your view on this, and Bob Don, I mean, do people say, look, I don't want the retail space empty, so, I'm going to be accommodating in terms of trying to find a way to help these folks survive until, I got more people coming back that can patronize them and allow them to do business and be able to pay their rent the way they're supposed to pay their rent.
The smart retailers, I'm sorry, the smart landlords are working with their retailers. They're partnering with them. What choice do we have? This is the first time that we can all talk to one another and say, we're partners here. We need you, you need us. Where landlord, you gave me a rent abatement. Let me see what I can and extend for you. Pick those retailers that are competent, that understand, they're nimble, that understand how to live and work within a new environment, where they can know how to order inventory, where their logistics are good, where they have the halo effect of their e-commerce. Find thousands of years. People like to shop. I mean, they don't buy nice suits if they have to. Maybe, I don't know, John. Do they come to your office and fit you out? Like I don't.
I will tell you that I was lucky enough over COVID to drop 20 pounds. So I took myself to Saks.
Good man.
I outfitted myself in all new suits because they told me that the suits I had they couldn't tailor, and I made the guy at Saks very happy. He was a happy guy. And I was a happy guy, and my wife was a very happy woman because she got to oversee this whole process.
And luxury, go back the luxury business.
Yeah, I mean, I think that look, there were people in the store. I think
Absolutely.
Obviously we need, but Bob and I are in suits and ties. I wouldn't tell you, and Don's got his jacket on, but I wouldn't tell you that when I walk on the street, when I go to restaurants, that everybody's similarly attired. But it actually makes me feel like the world is normal by doing this. And so it's
100%.
Right? It's 100%. Like, this is the world that we know and we love and that we've lived in. So for me, like coming back and being in the office and doing that helps that. And I think it's kind of something that we talk to the world at large. I mean, Bob is obviously very visible in terms of the real estate world. So, you're doing a Zoom call with him and he's on it and he looks like that. And he's in his office. That's helpful to everybody in terms of kind of what they're seeing, right? And how they're viewing stuff.
100%.
Things do change though. I remember.
Oh, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, things do change. I think I was born in a suit and tie, and I went up to
I think you went to sleep in a suit and tie too.
But I went up to do John's law school class, and Jeff Blau was speaking before me, and I didn't wear a tie because it was, it was a law school campus, and I was told, yeah, don't worry about a tie. And Blau pulled me to the side and he said, we come here to recruit people, right? And if they want to work for us, they're going to wear a tie. Go get your tie. But we're in the office. We're not wearing ties. This is like 4 or 5 years later. So things change.
Well, let me give you a little adage. When I went to see your boss, Ross, we were having a bite to eat, and I was dressed like this about 5 or 6 weeks ago, and he started laughing at me that I had a tie on. This is a guy that never not had a tie on. So it's very interesting to see how things shift. Of course, at 80, you can do what you want, right?
By the way, Steve Roth says the same thing. He said, listen, once I turn 75, I can do whatever the F I want. So tie, no tie, shirt, no shirt, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, it's okay. Now, the good news is we still have a ways to go to get there.
I made a decision at 60 to stop doing it when my son started emerging in the company. So last year was the end of the tie. I started wearing a tie when I started working on Capitol Hill at 16. So now, and I hated it. So I got accustomed to it. It's amazing what you can get accustomed to. But now I'm 60, no tie, but I got Jonathan's 20 pounds since between 60, I turned 60 in March, and I'm going to turn 61, and I'm 20 pounds higher. So I need to call you and find out what the secret is.
But by the way, I really
20 pounds.
Don, I didn't mean to give it to you. I really apologize. My wife just said get rid of it. She didn't say give it to Don.
Yeah, I mean, so I have to struggle to find a suit to put on. So an old one.
You got
Hey, Don, you said something about people moving down to Florida and wealthy people moving down to Florida. So, I mean, there's been a lot written about low tax states like Florida, like Texas, and people talking about relocating, either relocating from California to Texas, relocating from New York to Florida. You said something about whether or not that was real or not, and whether or not, Florida could really accommodate that. What are we doing in New York to compete against that, against people saying, well, maybe I should just move a bunch of my people down to Florida? And there are companies that have taken some space down there. What are we doing to compete, and what should we be doing to compete? And I'll open that up to other people on the panel. But
Well, I think the relocation down to Florida is real. It's just not mass scale. It's more entrepreneurial firms. And then the larger firms are opening up smaller outlets. I mean, we started doing business here in 1996. And then I moved personally down to Florida in 97 and then opened an office and started developing projects down here. However, one of the things our company struggled with, especially as we built a national business, was finding a talent pool. So in 2011, I went up to New York and expanded our office that we had there since 2008 because of a talent pool. And so I think Miami has come a long way since then. However, that impediment has gotten better. Also, the inventory's gotten better. But what has happened is Florida's gotten a bit better. South Florida has this wonderful place, but it's New York that's become less and less hospitable to wealthy individuals, entrepreneurs, and businesses in general. And so what needs to happen, I mean, let's think about New York City. Let's go from 2013 to pre-pandemic 2018. So the city got dirty. Crime increased significantly in terms of crime that's going to affect people walking down the street or taking the subway. Prices of real estate all went up significantly. And then different policies started slowly creeping in to drive the cost of doing business. And not just driving the cost of doing business for companies like all of ours, because we can pretty much afford it. It's the retailers like Joanne's client base that all of a sudden get burdened with these additional costs. And so that aspect, and then SALT happened. So you couldn't deduct all these, if you're in New York City, chances are you're paying at least 13%. If you have an unincorporated business, an LLC or the like, you could be paying 17. So people begin to say, you know what, I can live in Florida. And then the negative attacks on success and wealth and business. We became vilified by some of these politicians, and the politics started shifting far left. So and by the way, I think that our industry, we made a horrible mistake not getting into the mayor's race and making a decision and backing a candidate that could win that race in 2013. And the dynamic shifted tremendously. So what has to happen? We need a new mayor that is going to balance the approach to running government, not sway to be, our advocate, and not sway to be a radical that wants to run us all out of business. We need to immediately focus on cleaning the city up and making it safe, the fundamental things that make New York better. We need to look at, especially after coming out of a pandemic, we got to cut these regulations. We've got to stop burdening small businesses with these additional costs and these additional, management leverage. The taxes actually need to look at going down. We got to incentivize businesses to stay here. And the other thing is that the talk of a wealth tax has got to stop. The talk of a peer-to-peer tax has got to stop. The talk of a millionaire's tax has got to stop, because everybody hears this nonsense and they say, oh, you know what, the heck with it, I'm going to Florida, or I'm going to become a Florida resident. And New York has to structurally, over the last 7 years, New York added 38,000, New York City, 38,000 employees, all in social services, very few cops, for example. So the New York city has a structural imbalance of about $8 billion, and it cannot raise that money through taxes. It's got to right size itself. So it's a combination of things, but also there's got to be a true partnership to come out of this and be able to compete. There's got to be a true partnership between business and government and the average person. Mike Bloomberg said this back in 2010. that we can't build a wall around New York City. You can't build a wall around Manhattan. People are going to go and they're more mobile. And what this pandemic has shown us is the ability to do business from anywhere. So I think that, I mean, we're at a critical time. And I think the biggest risk confronting New York City is how New York City will be governed over these next 4 years coming out of the pandemic. I mean, if we go the direction that we are at right now, I think, and where the politics are going, I mean, it could be devastating. So I think we've got to we have to recognize we have to compete for businesses and we have to compete for high income earners. And those are the people, those are the sectors that pay the vast majority of what it costs to run the place. So change in leadership is first. And
the good news is there is going to be a change in leadership. The question is where it goes to.
Don,
Yeah.
you are so right on. Do you know how many of my retailers have said to me, we're not opening in New York. There are plenty of growth cities with less risk, encouraging our presence there. I literally, one of my team members, one of the young people on my team, she's down in Miami now. She's doing our work in Miami. We're looking at other markets because we're concerned about New York. When a retailer says to me, the cost of doing business here is so much higher. And you know, there's a fear factor. One of the highest rates for larceny is literally in New York City. People walking into stores, they're literally doing it during the day now. If any of you saw that thing with Chanel.
Chanel, it was a terrible story. And
it was a
story
terrible story.
Right.
But what does it really say? We don't have a government that is governing, and you couldn't be more correct. Every tenant that I speak to says, you know what, just because you have somebody in front, they're not going to take out a gun and shoot people when they walk into the store. It's meaningless having security. People don't want to walk on the street. How am I going to get people to go on Madison Avenue if they're afraid? What they're saying is it's changing. It will. It won't change until we have a new government. We also need money. The city has no money. How are we going to be able to do this?
One thing we've got to be mindful, though, is it was post Mike Bloomberg and the public. I mean, New York's a city of 8.7 million people, and we cannot just focus on, 80,000 of us. We've got to focus on everyone. And so when de Blasio came in, he came in really with an expectation that he was going to rebalance things to make them more equitable. And then he got pushed and pushed and pushed to the left. And then you had AOC and others come in, and the city council got more to the left, and here we find ourselves. So where we want to get to is this kind of balance, but recognizing that there is a wealth and income disparity in New York City, but we cannot abdicate the solutions being developed by the government. We in business have to lay out what the solutions are, because this is our area of expertise. And we have to say to the government, you want us to stay, you want us to keep tenants here, we need you to do this fast. And the first thing you've got to do is clean this city up and make us safe. Do those two things first. I mean, New York City prospered under Bloomberg after 9/11. Think about that. After 9/11, look at what happened downtown. Look at the massive impact that Hudson Yards has had to the west side. Look at what's happening to the city, because it was safe. It was clean. It was the cleanest big city in the world, basically. And it had an environment of, excitement. It was a business-friendly environment. And now it's gone to another extreme. And so I think we've got to weigh in on this, in the business community and REBNY and other organizations and financial services. We've got to actually, really step into this, because we have such a vested interest. I mean, you imagine if there's a wealth tax, a pied-à-terre tax, and a millionaire's tax, what that's going to do to our business?
Okay. Well, Don, I think let's not get carried away in going down that rabbit hole of hearing all the horrible things that could happen. I think people are being very active in terms of opposing those things that, like the pied-à-terre tax has, been put up and shot down numerous times, because I think, people like Mr. Winter and Mr. Alexander, are aware of what that would do to the city. And it's not, it's like killing the goose that laid the golden egg. You need to be able to have people here to be able to pay taxes in a reasonable way so they can actually support the services that the city needs to provide. I think you're right about the issue of crime and what I call quality of life issues, because I think all of us who are here know that the tenants that are here, whether they're living in the city, whether they're working in the city, everybody needs to maintain that certain quality of life. And I think that's one of the things that the government needs to provide to us. And I think all of us and everybody who's on the call needs to be focused on the upcoming election, the upcoming Democratic primary. Think about who's going to help us kind of get to where we all think we need to go to in order to have the city reemerge as the city that we know and love, and where we've spent a large portion of our working lives, and where we obviously have vested interest in seeing the city come back to the city that we know and love. Going back,
Steve, what's that?
Despite all of that, it's still a great city.
John?
That's the bottom line. We still have more. We have more density. We have more cultural opportunity for people to enjoy. It's still, if you look at the numbers, if you look at the tourism numbers for New York City, you're going to be blown away by what we're seeing. NYC's companies come up with some fantastic numbers.
What we're seeing today, or what we're seeing?
Here's the craziest thing. I'll give you some numbers that'll kind of shock you, because people don't realize. First of all,
They will shock me
in a positive way. No, I'm giving you good numbers. Okay, I'm going to tell you that while New York City, now there's an area that they define, the Times Square Alliance defines. It's from 41st to 49th Street, from 7th to Broadway, and then there's just this little piece on 42nd to 43rd on 8th Avenue. How many people, average daily visitors, and this is great for me for retail, but it's great for all of us. Daily, 106,762 people. Daily. There are still people in New York that shop, live their lives here, need restaurants, need stores, they need all of that, and they need offices. And here's a better statistic. These are the things that excite me about New York, because the resilience is there. And I know that with a new administration, we're going to see positive stuff. I still have activity with all my retailers. They're still looking. You know, the difference is they're saying, I better get in now, because the numbers, the rent numbers are so much lower than they ever were before. And they are going to creep up again. Will they be as high as they were in the past? Probably not. But those numbers are going to come up. Here's a great statistic. Our top year for tourism in New York was 2019. Sad to say, we know what happened right after that. What was it? 66.6 million people. Guess what? You know what they're projecting for 24? More. 69.2 million.
For 24?
Yep. This is coming from NYC.
Okay.
Now,
But we're at 21.
Well, it's going to be slow. It's going to be a ramp up. Still, okay, but still, we have 30. Okay. I'm looking at lemonade here.
By the way, I just want to point out, you gotta love Joanne. And I think the good news is we ratcheted her down. She could have told us what it was going to be in 2028, and she walked that one back. So we got to 2024.
You know what? Believe it or not, 24.
Joanne, we got to deal with 21, 22, and 23.
Well, we go for 38. We'll get 38 million. We'll keep on going up. That's a lot of people.
Steve, you started to say something. So let's come back to you for a minute.
If I can, are you going Steve or are you going me? Because here's a comment.
Okay, let's go to Bob first and then Steve.
So a couple things. One is let's go back to remote working, because it's the work is the, Don, what you've said is right on. It's 100%. I can't, it's 1,000% actually. It's not 100%, but the issue I think is for all the folks that are the 120 people that are on this call, and for the rest of the business community, it doesn't seem to be the tip of the spear. An organization that is the tip of the spear that can exert counter influence and counterbalance on what is really going left on us right now, right? There's RevNE, and RevNE is a great organization, but here I find myself after 40 years in the business that I've got to go back to school again, because they allowed a law to be passed that I've got to get re-educated now after 40 years of passing tests. How did that happen, Rodney? How did you do that? My point being is we need a business council, and we do have a bunch of them. No one seems to be sort of leading the charge, right? I really believe that, because I have a lot of people saying a lot of things that go to a lot of meetings, but no one's in there pounding the desk. Two, you got to get people back to work. The only way you get people back to work is I have my CEO say, you know what, we're going to make a national effort to get everybody back to work. And Jamie Dimon says, you know what, we're going to make a national effort to get everyone back to work. And I bring up names. I'm not trying to point out individual companies, but you've got to sit down and say, everybody needs to come back to work. It's starting a little bit, but you got to do it now. And you got to set a schedule for them to say, look, we understand that, you got to get out of your sweats and get back into a suit again. So we're going to start this up on May 1st, if you will, right? And you'll come in 2 days a week. And then in June and July, it'll be 3 days a week. But there's got to be a plan, particularly for New York, that the bigger employers actually come back in. Two, the employers have to think about the following. I hear you, Steve, on the remote working. You're 25 years old. You haven't earned the right to be a remote worker. You're 35 years old. You haven't earned the right to be a remote worker. I'm 66, and I'm still at the damn office 3 days a week since Labor Day. My point being is, and I'm on automatic pilot. I know what to do. I know how to push all the buttons and do this. People that are in their 20s, 30s, and early 40s, forget it. You need to be in the work 5 days a week to get the culture, to get the experience, to create upward mobility. So I do think that these are issues. If you want to start trying to heal, and look, the politics are key, 100%. That's got to start grinding out right now, because if you don't, you're going to lose in the fall. And the second is getting everybody back into the city. And that's really incumbent upon all the CEOs of the corporations that currently reside in New York and nationally for that stuff. And that's
Bob, is that something, I mean, is the New York City partnership, I mean, who should be pushing? I agree. It needs to come from the CEO level. I mean, when John Gray said, we're all going to be back in the office, and by the way, of course, I'm there, somehow
of course.
Everybody got back to the office, and there are protocols, there's testing, if you go out of state, and then you have to be quarantined for a period of X days, and then you're tested and come back. But you know what? Everybody's there, and Joanne made fun of that I'm going out and I'm supporting all of our restaurants because I'm having lunch all the time. But a lot of the people that are out there, I mean, the real estate people are there, the Blackstone people are there, the Goldman people are back. Some people are back on an A and B schedule, or they don't like to say A and B because no one wants to be on the B. They want to be on the A. So they say, okay, it'll be blue and gold or red and yellow or whatever else you want. But I think, that there's got to be kind of a concerted effort to do that. And that requires people working together
John, if you're headquartered in New York, you should be linking up, whether it's John Gray, whether it's Jamie Dimon, all right, whether it's Mike Corbett, soon to be Jane, I forgot her last name, or it's Gorman over at Morgan Stanley. Where is everybody? Where is everybody? Guys, you got to step up now, and you've got to really make the appointment and start working over a candidate or candidates that you want to back that are going to have at least an equal or a position that's going to allow this city to prosper. And Don points out, it can't be a one-sided situation where it's all pro-business on one side. But right now, look, some of the times I commute 45 minutes to an hour even now with no traffic, right? And I'm grinding out, paying taxes. I'm going, you know what? I could go down to Florida and just live on investment income and make some deals here and there and do what I got to do. Be a lot goddamn easier. So
yeah, but you particularly.
Yes, there's a difference in the DNA, but my point being,
your DNA doesn't.
That would last about 30 minutes.
By the way, no, I think Steve, that's probably an exaggeration. It's probably about 15.
It's just at the end of the day, it's frustrating to me because obviously I've worked with all these major corporations over the last 40 years, and it's like, you got to step up now. Part of it's going down and punching Blasio in the head and go, look, wake up. You got 10 months left. Don't blow the place up. Don't do what, well, don't we get into politics, but don't burn the house down on the way out, right? We all know how that works. So, and then part two is.
We got a request from one of the people on the call saying.
Can I just make, John, can I just make two comments? Sorry, there were
Sure.
so many great points made, and I don't want to reiterate all the great things that the panel said. But just two comments. One is a PSA. We have a deadline coming up, February 14th, right, where you have to register to vote.
I agree.
At a primary. So register, right?
And register, and by the way, given the fact that the Democratic primary in most circumstances is going to result in who the mayor is, we've had unusual circumstances with the Bloomberg, or way back when Giuliani was fully there, but now we have to deal with the fact that it's likely to be a Democratic mayor, and therefore, if you don't vote in the primary, you're not really having the same kind of impact as you would otherwise have. So making sure that you're registered, if you're up to it as a Democrat, or if you want to vote in the primary. Otherwise, you can. But in any event, you need to register, whatever political affiliation you have.
Exactly. And then the second thing, which I can't believe I'm saying on February 10th of 2021, is if your company doesn't have a plan to get back to the office, reach out to me. We've been back since June 22nd of 2020. We have everyone here 5 days a week. We've had a few cases, but we've managed through it. It has been a game changer to be back. You can absolutely do it. You don't have to wait till September. So please, as Bob said, start to focus your organizations on getting back. It's key to rebuilding and to
100%.
moving forward.
So one of the people in the audience said, employees aren't coming back, and employers really need to adapt. And I'm not sure that some of the panelists agree that that's the end result. So I'd be interested, we started to talk about it. I mean, who's driving the bus, right? Is the bus being driven by employees who are saying, well, I'm not coming back. I like walking around in my sweats and pajamas. And so the employers are going to adapt, or are the employers saying, we are going to be back. And you can either stay in your pajamas at home, or you can come back to work. But if you want to come back, if you want to be at work, you're going to be at work. So I'd be interested in how people respond to which of those is the right driver for how we're going to re-engage and continue to operate.
If I may, here's my premise. Vaccines are here. By the way, I got
Vaccinations.
mine. Right.
Exactly.
So what's going to happen is there's a political issue with all these major corporations, right? Because they don't want to be sued with somebody getting COVID coming back to the office. That's what it is. You can say whatever you want, but that's what it is. And what's going to happen is that's going to go away, and people that are slow, they're basically going to be overly cautious, not have their people come back till the end of the year or beginning of next year. They will be behind the 8 ball on the people that are more aggressive in bringing their company back in sooner. And part two is when someone opens their Yap and says, and it's now next year, and I'm not coming in because I want to remote work. How about you find a new job? All right, because guess what? Unemployment's still 6 or 7%. These are a lot. The jobs in New York typically tend to be good jobs. You're only going to be able to hide behind the COVID excuse for another 6 or 9 months tops. And you just got to make a decision. Do you want to be totally risk adverse? God bless. Or do you want to get back in and get back to business? You will be behind the 8 ball if you're completely remote through the end of this year and beginning of next year.
We used to call in high school, we used to have the 235 club, right? It was the kids that just went home after school. They didn't, go to band, they didn't go to football, they didn't go to chess club, they didn't do something, right? Like those people are gonna exist. But Steve Ross, taught me something, early on in why New York is always going to be successful. We have more PhDs than anyone in the world, right? Poor, hungry, driven people. And the kids at MIT and the kids at Harvard, they're all going to want to come here, and they're going to want to be together. They're going to want to have upward mobility, right? And I think that's That's our secret sauce, right? And people will change and people will have a little bit more flexibility and remote work capability. But at the end of the day, you need to be together. David Solomon said it best, everyone's going to work from home until their competitor gets on a plane to go pitch a customer, right? And you're going to lose the business if you get on that plane, right? That's just human nature. And that's going to play out. It's just, it's going to take a little bit of time, but that's just how the world works.
So,
I think we're gonna see
one
everything
of the
change.
members of the audience kind of asked us, and it was directed to Bob and me, but more generally, what are we doing about the people? We're urging people to come back to the office. That it's good to be back in the office. That there are all the benefits of collaboration and interfacing with other people and upward mobility, all the rest of that. What are you doing about the people, where there are, issues of homeschooling and women in the workforce, and how do they deal with the conflicting concerns of if in fact the kids are at home so that they need to be there because they have to be there in order to try and accommodate the homeschooling? What are employers, what are they doing, and what should they be doing to facilitate, people coming back to the office? So I mean, I would only say that, we are trying to be responsive to people's individual concerns. So to the extent that somebody has a particular problem, we're trying to address that. By the same token, that problem is not everybody. And so, you shouldn't kind of say, okay, no one has to come back to the office because this person has a childcare problem or this person has an elder parent problem or whatever else it is. I think the other thing is I think people have created, some creative solutions. Mark Holliday, S.L. Green, they created a school within the building so that with people who were doing remote learning, they could actually bring kids to work. They had proctors in the school. The proctors could help them with homework. So that they had a couple people who told me said, can I come here full time because my kid really enjoys school? He said, well, let's take it one day at a time. At the moment, it's trying to solve a particular problem. But he said, it wouldn't be a bad idea. So I think people, at least from my perspective, people are trying to come up with creative solutions. And also, I think we're also seeing the vaccine rollout. And I think that will change things. And it's, obviously we've seen cases go down across the country. They're not going down to levels that are satisfactory yet, but they're on the way down as opposed to on the way up. There are multiple vaccines that are on the market. They've dropped the age from 65 to lower, but it's first with people with pre-existing conditions. But I think, and my own chairman has said, obviously, as the vaccine rolls out and as more and more people are inoculated, more and more people should be back in the office because then it's not the compelling issue. But my perspective, Steve, Bob.
I just have my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old foot canvas a different submarket every day, and they report back at 8:00 at night on. No, look, it's a real issue. It's a challenge for sure. And again, I think the key is September, and that's what I said earlier, because schools will open back up, and that that is a real problem. Look, Related mandated its workforce back in June. I think about 90% mandated us back unless you had a reason that you could.
A compelling circumstance.
And about 90% came back, and of course, the company worked with those who had underlying health issues, who had childcare issues. And you have to manage those because this is a very real, serious problem. I don't want to diminish that, but we gotta fight the fight, right? We gotta push forward, and we gotta figure it out.
We're going to come to the end of our program, but I want to end by asking each of you, and I'm not as far-seeing as my friend Joanne, so I'm not going to go out to 2024. I'm just going to go out to 2022. And if we're in 2022, we're all getting together again on what might be in person, which is a wonderful thought. We could all be in the same room. And I said to you folks, like, what would you think would be the topics of the day that we'd be talking about, and what do you think New York City would look like? I kind of go person by person, and I'd like to kind of get your rendition. So maybe Steve, since you're up, let's start with you, and then we'll work that through the panel.
Sure. Look, I think once museums, people are comfortable going to museums, people are, arts and culture is back, sports stadiums are back, people have more comfort. There's no doubt in my mind that New York City is going to come back. And I think we're going to really start to feel that, by I think your question was, this time next year. I think we're certainly going to feel, that in February of 22. And in terms of, how people are going to be working, I think a lot of the forward-thinking companies, the Googles of the world, are going to announce and execute on new strategies. And I think that is going to help people, right size, think about how, their operations are going to move forward. And I think there'll be a lot of new trends that sort of come out of this. Again, more collaboration spaces, more meeting spaces, in some instances, maybe some less head down spaces. But I think a lot of those trends are going to start to be rolled out, and we're going to start to understand those trends by this time next year.
On
I think
workplace.
right.
I think New York in 2022 will be on the road to a significant recovery. The recovery will look very different. It will include greater diversity. I think you will see our industry diversify. I believe that entrepreneurs, be it tech sector, be it financial services and other spaces, are going to help propel New York City's recovery. It will, the big companies, the big corporations will, make their mark here, and they're critical to New York City. But entrepreneurs will help bring us back, and New York has become more affordable, and so we'll see the residential demand expand. And that is one of the things that will help the tech companies continue to expand in the market, because New York will become a bit more affordable. And as that dynamic continues, these younger workers are going to come back to New York City, and we'll look at 2022. We'll be looking back and saying, wow, can you believe that happened? And look where we are today. But it'll be a big comeback.
Bob?
I concur with both Don and Steve on a comeback in 22 for sure. You can already see the seeds. I would hope that 22 brings us a more balanced political environment. I would also hope, and we haven't mentioned this today, that we have briefly with the education and the school system, you've got a major issue that you've lost a year of education, if you will, particularly in the inner city, on all the young students that are either didn't have the technology, didn't have the oversight, or what have you. This is going to be an issue, and it needs to be addressed. If you want a viable city, you've got to have an education system that works, and it's not working. And the guy in charge of it and his boss have a lot of lip service, and it's basically, I don't mean to go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I am hopeful that dialogue will include all the workers that are going to come in and help pay for all of our Social Security as we get older, because we need them in a productive environment, and they're not in now. 22 relative to business comes back. People will be back in the office full throttle. All the decisions, as Steve mentioned before, that have been put off from last year and through the first 6 months of this year will start to snowball. I have a very good friend of mine who's a senior guy over at Blackstone. Name will be withheld. When I told him our business was down 70% in 21, I'm sorry, in 20, he said, yeah, you'll probably be at 65% in 21, and then in 22, you're going to be at 120%. And I said, well, that's not good for me, because I'm going to be 67 at that point. I can't keep up.
That's young.
So yes, I am optimistic, but we do have big challenges. And as I said before, they're all in the political realm right now, but we need help. There's a lot of people that need help. There's 1 million school children that need help. Anyway.
Okay, Joanne, so I'm going to ask you to move the clock back from 2024 to 2022. So move the clock back a little bit and tell us what it's going to look like in 2022.
What was the opportunity?
Joanne, you're on mute. We lost you for a second.
How is that possible? Okay.
No, now you're back.
Okay. Am I back?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay. But this is a wonderful opportunity for landlords and tenants to partner, because there is a time now, we've got a lot of tenants that are looking to either extend their term. There are new tenants that will be coming into the market. There's still activity with tenants that are trying to reload, improve the spacing that they have, expand within neighborhoods. We really need to see the pandemic end in a realistic way. And that means that people are coming back into their offices, they're going back to school, childcare exists again so that mothers can go back to work. The largest percentage of unemployment is among women, and that's terrible. And it's because of the daycare that they need to have. So how is it going to be? I think we're going to see a lot of absorption in terms of the retail. People will be in restaurants again. We'll have new restaurants. We'll have new people. And I think it's going to be an exciting time because everybody, all of us, are going to appreciate. Every time I go into a restaurant, I'm going to say, thank God I'm not cooking again. We're at a point now where we're all ready. And whether you're in an office or you work in a retail store, we all need to connect with one another. And we need to find those connections. And if we don't, it'll change society forever. And we're not going to let that happen. 22, 23, 24, it doesn't matter. We will find solutions as long as we can get this pandemic under control. And we get good government.
I want to thank our panel. It's obviously an extraordinary panel. Everybody is a friend. Thank you for participating. I want to thank our friends at Anchin for hosting us and for thank all the people who participated. And I will hope everybody has a good day. And we look forward to that, getting through this year. This year will be much better than last year. And 2022 will be great. And 2024 is going to be off the charts.
Gangbusters.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you, John.
Ciao.
Bye, everyone.